Isabel, can you talk about your experience as the only girl growing up in a house with four brothers?
Yes. So all my brothers are a lot older than me. The youngest is 5 years older. So my relationship with a lot of my brothers isn't sort of like your common like older brother kind of like younger sister back and forth relationship. So I didn't fight like siblings normally fight with a lot of my brothers because I was 3 years old when my oldest brother left for college. But I mean, my brothers are really protective of me, like all brothers are. Um, but another funny thing is that my mom and I kind of like are the boss at home, even though we're really outnumbered. If you go into my house, it's like all pink. There's pink everywhere. My mom kind of decided when she found out that she was having her fourth boy, like if I'm gonna be growing up in essentially a fraternity house, I'm gonna have some like pink women, girl power going on in here. So um, yeah, I still get like that strong women influence from my mom and like women in my community. And um, my brothers never really like pushed me down or made me feel like I was lesser than them. Like I was always kind of the boss. There's this story of me when I was like 4 years old at a varsity football game at St. Chris. Um, and apparently I like walked up to the bench and was like, move over. And there's this picture of me sitting on the varsity football bench, like in my pink little dress with all the football players. So I never really had that like middle school kind of fear of like,
Awkward phase.
yeah, like worried or scared of talking to boys, which could get me in a little trouble sometimes, like back talking. But I mean, yeah.
That was a good answer. How would you say your experience differed from your brothers?
I mean, so in so many ways, just because like obviously, like so many reasons, just like going to St. Catherine's is different from going to St. Christopher's in a lot of ways. But like in terms of like my parents, like when your parents have already had like four people go through like essentially the same school, there's not really a need to like go to all of like the information nights and like college nights and everything. And so that's kind of nice because you kind of feel like your parents have it worked out and like everything's under control. So that's usually nice. Also a funny thing is like when I have classes at St. Chris, I have to like remind like Mr. McGuire this year, I had to remind him on the first day, like, don't have any presumptions of me based on how my brothers were in this class because some of them were troublemakers.
How do you think your early life experiences will impact you going forward?
So I think the fact that I never really had an like older sister kind of made me more impressionable. Like, so I had that sort of like opening to look for like strong women in my community and like role models outside of my family. So it kind of opened my eyes to like see like the effect that women had like around me and like look for like teachers or adults or like older girls that I could like draw like influences from. And yeah, because I didn't have that like at home other than my mom, who's awesome.
To build on that question, in terms of women's rights, who do you look up to the most? Like in other words, who do you consider your biggest female role model?
I love Oprah. Oprah's amazing. I think everyone should try to be like Oprah. She was born into poverty in rural Mississippi, and she ended up being the first ever like black woman billionaire. I mean, she's like a woman of color that made her way up. Like she's literally got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and then she uses her platform and her voice that she has been given to advocate for marginalized groups and for like activism and helping people that don't have or not lucky enough to have the voice that she has. I love Oprah so much. I went this summer to the African American History Museum, Smithsonian. I don't know, is it a Smithsonian? I don't know. And there was like a special exhibit on Oprah, and it was amazing. Changed my life. I literally love Oprah so much.
So we often hear in popular culture about presenting women in a demeaning manner. Can you give an example of a book or a movie that represents women in a strong, positive light?
So my first one I think would be Hidden Figures. We all went and saw Hidden Figures like a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, as a upper schools, St. Christopher's and St. Catherine's. I mean, the movie's like amazing, but the story behind it is really one that it's not fair that it went untold for so long. Like the black women that are depicted in that movie, like literally are brilliant, and their findings were like essential, 100% essential to the success of Mercury Atlas 6, which was a space flight that literally turned the tide of the space race. And it was just like such a huge, like their work was just so important, and that just went untold for so long. But the movie is amazing, and I love it, and that's all. And also, okay, actually, never mind. You can keep going.
I was gonna ask, like, what effect did that movie play on your life specifically?
I don't know. I just love, like, we too often see like movies and like magazine covers. I know this is so cliche, but like women's bodies really are objects. I mean, you hear that all the time, but it's hard to understand when you're not like living it. But there's so much pressure to be look a certain way and act a certain way, talk a certain way for women, that when there's also another movie, like a character that I love is Eleven from Stranger Things, because she's not like your average like girly girl, frilly. She's like a tomboy, but she's awesome. She can literally move stuff with her mind. Like, she's so cool, and like she kind of defies all of like the stereotypes. This is how you need to look to be a hero kind of girl.
That's a good answer. So going back to the idea of stereotypes, what female stereotypes bother you the most?
So I think so it really bothers me when girls get called like bossy or arrogant or overly opinionated when they just like state their opinion. Maybe that's just because it happens to me a lot, because I always talk about my opinions on things, but it's unfair that women are kind of put at a deficit when they're trying to explain how they feel about a topic. And if I could say anything to like St. Christopher's boys, or any boys, to is to like actively try to make the women that you're talking to feel like their opinions are equally as valid as your opinion is, even when you don't agree with them, and even especially when you don't agree with them, because it's really important. Like, I don't think it's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, what she has to say doesn't matter as much as what I have to say because she's a girl. I don't think that that's the mindset of anyone, but it's just like, it's institutionalized bias, and it's not your fault, but it like becomes your fault if you're not actively working against it.
Yeah, so those are all the questions we have. Thank you for coming out and letting us interview you.
You're so welcome.